Hello, this is Dr. Heather Lee, and this is an instructional session about meeting student needs in the classroom as part of EDS 318. And you should download from our website this document, Meeting Special Needs, and print that out or be on your computer where you can take a few notes or highlight and really look at this. I know sometimes these documents don't come out as clearly on the screen as I would hope, so you may need that to look at. All right, we're going to be talking about 5 different general categories. These categories describe groups of students and needs that they may have, and for each category, we'll talk about a definition, some of their characteristics, and then also strategies for meeting their needs in the classroom. So we'll be looking at this chart and I'll be scrolling up and down on this document as I go. So the 5 categories are along the top. We have struggling learners, learning disabled, at risk, ELL or English language learners, and gifted students. So let's start by talking about struggling learners. These are students who can't learn at an average rate. They don't learn as quickly or as well as a regular student does for various reasons. And they often, under characteristics, have a limited attention span. They don't pay attention for as long, or they might have some deficits in reading, writing, and math, especially those core subject areas. Those core subject areas that really have an impact in all the subject areas. If a student is a poor reader, that's going to affect them in history and in science and every subject area. So, as a teacher, you always will have struggling learners, those who don't learn as quickly as the others. So some things that you can do for them are varying your instructional techniques, doing different things for them, developing lessons around their interests, their experiences. So instead of just teaching it the same way every time, try to think, okay, how can I get Johnny involved in this? What are his interests? What can I use as a visual that would really keep his attention? You certainly want to have an encouraging, supportive environment where they don't feel like a failure if they don't do as well, or they don't feel like they're bothering you or you're annoyed by their difficulty keeping up. Cooperative learning and working with other students is a good way to help them. Providing aids for their studying, ways that will help them to learn in a better way. And being sure that your teaching is sequential and that you continue along the way to check for understanding. That you don't just assume, if I've said it or if I've put it in writing, they should know it, they should understand it. Or if their homework assignment was to read the chapter, they should know that. But to understand that, no, these students need more from me than that, and to systematically teach them well. Individualize as that's needed, to do something just for that student to help them understand. Using not just talking to them, auditory, but also visual things for them. And working on their self-concept, helping them to feel good about who they are as a person. And I think by focusing on a student's strengths is a main way that we can do that as teachers. So those are some strategies to help struggling learners in the classroom. The second category we'll talk about are learning disabled students. And I want you to notice right away that learning disabled is not the same thing as struggling learners. There are many students who have difficulty learning for various reasons that don't have an official learning disability. It could be because that learning disability has not been found yet, or it just could be that they struggle with learning. So don't assume anybody who struggles is learning disabled. Now, this category, learning disabled, is huge. Listen to some of these things that could fall under that category. Speech or language impairment, mental retardation, emotional or behavioral disabilities, OHI, which stands for other health impairment, that's something that doesn't have one of these specific categories, visual impairment, deafness, blindness, traumatic brain injury, and the autism spectrum. All of those things can fall under this category of learning disabled. And that's a very big category, as you can see. Now, a couple of key principles that you should understand, and some of these are actually key terms I really want to draw your attention to. And if I were you, I would highlight these key words because you will need to know them. First is IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, and that is the law that says that our students should be mainstreamed. We call it mainstreamed in LRE, the least restrictive environment. And what that means is that it's a last resort for someone to be taken out of the regular classroom. Sometimes we teachers think, oh, they need more help than I can give them. Send them to the special ed classroom. But no, we serve students best when they're with their peers and when they're with regular education students. If we sent every student away who had some little disability here or there, they would not be served as well. Students respond the best when they're in that regular classroom, and we help them with whatever needs they may have. So least restrictive environment means that we try to keep them in the regular classroom. That's called mainstreaming. Another key word is accommodation, and you really need to understand accommodation versus the next one, modification. Accommodation is when we adjust the curriculum, the instruction, the learning tasks, assessments, or materials to make the learning more accessible to students. So these are changes that we make, but these are not changes to the actual standard. We still expect the students to achieve the standard. But it could be maybe they need the test read to them because they have difficulties with reading, or they have difficulties with vision, so they need it read, or they need it in a different format. So we still have the same expectation of them, but we make accommodations in order to help them be able to succeed. That is different from a modification. This is when we realize that a student truly cannot perform the standard that's asked of them. And so we actually change the standard, and that has to be documented. This is not something you would do on your own. You as a teacher have freedom to make accommodations and to try lots of things to help students succeed, but you probably don't have the freedom to make modifications where you actually say, okay, I'm not going to make the student responsible for that, or I'm going to allow them to skip that section and not be responsible for a certain part of it because I don't feel that they can do it. This is something that is done in a group setting and should be spelled out in an IEP. You've probably heard of that. An IEP is an individualized education program that must be followed by law. These are not suggestions. An IEP is in the law and has to be followed through. And in that IEP, it would list maybe some accommodations, but definitely some modifications. If modifications are needed, they would be listed in that IEP as well. So those are some key terms that you need to know about when working with students with learning disabilities. A third category is at risk. And we talked about this before when we talked about student diversity. At-risk students are those who are not able to acquire or use the skills necessary to develop their potential and become productive members of society. These students are at risk of dropping out of school. They are at risk of not being a productive member of society, of making very poor choices or unable to make right choices where they can be productive in society. These students often have a history of academic failure in the past. They may have already been held back, or they may just be older than their classmates in general. There may be some emotional, behavioral difficulties, and you might find that these students hang out with low-achieving peers. They're with a group who aren't achieving very well to begin with. They're not very attached to the school. They could care less about it many times and can't wait to get out of school. And more we see them disengaging, backing away, and not being involved with school. So some of the strategies, some of the things that you can try if you realize or you suspect that a student may be at risk. First of all, we want to identify as early as possible that a student is at risk, and not waiting until the end, not waiting until they're failing or until they drop out. We want to cultivate a warm, supportive school environment so that everybody is safe and everybody is welcome. We want them to know that we have high expectations, that we believe that they can succeed. We have not given up on them. We won't let them just check out. Then be willing to give them the support that they need. Now, these students also need to make the connection that they are the ones who make their success possible. Many times these type of students believe that it's other things beyond their control. that they can't help, that is making them not succeed. It's because of my home situation, or it's because of the teacher. The teachers don't like me and I have a bad reputation. Instead, you need to make sure they understand and reinforce that when they work hard and they follow through, they will have success. But when they don't, they are responsible for those results. And then, because we talked before about how they disengage from school and they're really unattached, one strategy is to encourage them to get involved with something in school and to have a part of that school identity. And that may allow them to make some stronger ties and actually want to stay part of their school. So those are 3 categories: struggling learners, learning disabled, and at risk. And we're going to end this video session here and continue with ELL and gifted students in the next instructional segment. Thank you.